News Talk 94.5 WPTI, 96.7 FM WTOB. You're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug, Brice, and Garrett, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. In the studio this morning, you've got Brice Payne and Garrett Ray. And this morning, we are opening up that mailbag and we are answering questions from listeners. Good morning, Brice. How you doing?
Morning, Garrett. First Saturday of the month, I'm doing well. It is Listener Question Week. I always enjoy these, see what good questions are coming in from our listeners here. Before we get started on the listener questions, almost football season, I'll just say that.
It is.
Getting close. We want to do our Wealth Guardian Service salute. So, Garrett, I'll go ahead and take it this time. You've been doing it many times, but every week we want to just take a few seconds at the beginning of each show and just give a shout out to the oftentimes under-recognized and underappreciated first responders and men and women in uniform who do what they do to keep the Stars and Stripes and Old Glory and our homeland here safe from harm and protected and keep our liberties and freedoms running. And so we want to just take a second and thank you. And also, just as importantly, no less importantly, your families as well, because they make just as much of a sacrifice as you do. So thank you to everyone out there who has done what they can for our country. And let's go ahead. Garrett, you've got a question to better get to know your Wealth Guardians advisor here. What was the question?
So as you mentioned, Brice, almost football season. Of course, it always kicks off with college football. So that got me, then we get pros a little bit later, but that got me thinking about college days. And the question we're going to ask ourselves this week is, Brice, what was your favorite college course that you took? Or maybe if you didn't have a favorite course, did you have a favorite professor?
My favorite course was a physics course, an intro to physics course. I had to take something along those lines as a core curriculum, but I really did enjoy it. And I've been good at math. I've never been real great at science, but the way that they taught that intro course was really, really well. And you just learn a lot of fun, interesting stuff about wavelengths and frequencies and all of that. But that was mine. I think I got close to a 4.0 and it did better than I did in most courses. But what about you? What was your favorite course? Yeah,
so for me, I mentioned it a few times on the show, but I am a civil engineer undergrad major. And my favorite course was one of the hardest course I took, and that was actually surveying. So you going out and surveying it, and nowadays with modern technology, you see surveyors out there. It's fairly easy. They got GPS coordinates and everything else, and they can measure elevation as well. But of course, our professor did not allow us to do that. We did it the old-fashioned way with this device it's got a funny name, but it's called the dumpy level. It's by the guy who invented it. And we had like a steel 100-foot tape. And you remember there was all these calculations you had to do based on like the ambient temperature of the air, the expansion and contraction of the steel, and like that could throw you off. And getting that plat to close within a certain amount of degrees and minutes of your survey was pretty challenging in of itself. So that was it was a semester-long survey of different parts of campus. And so we'd be out there in all different types of weather and conditions, and it'd be a Sunday morning and everyone else is enjoying their weekend. And nope, the civil engineering students are doing surveying. I
had to do a little bit of surveying in the Peace Corps when we were creating the water lines. We had to do some surveying, and there was a little crash course in amateur surveying, but I enjoy that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started here. As we said at the beginning of the show, it's Listener Mailbag Question Week, the first Saturday of every month. We try to get these in. And we've got some great questions here. Let's start off with the first one here. I recently learned that my job is being eliminated. Okay, sorry to hear that. So I'm in the process of sorting through my severance package and determining what decisions I need to make. They just gave me a statement from a pension fund that was set up for executives several years ago, and I guess I never knew it existed or forgot about it, but it has more than $250,000 in it. I guess one question is, what should I do with it? But I'm also curious if this is too good to be true. Is this a common occurrence where people just find large sums of money like this and they didn't know they had? So I'll tackle that second question first here. I'll turn it over to you, Garrett, but it is not that uncommon. I have had many clients who sit down with me and we do, and they've been a client for a year. We had known what all their accounts were, and we do an annual review with them. And even on the fourth annual review, they suddenly say, hey, well, wait a minute, I've got this other account I just learned about. Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So no, it is not as uncommon as you would think. Even my wife had an old 401k out there that she'd forgotten about, and we got a statement years after we'd been together for the first time. Garrett, what as far as he never knew he had it. What should he do with it? That's the main question there.
Yeah. So from what the listener wrote us, it's a little bit unclear, and this is going to get a little bit more details than you may have wanted, but it's important. It would be important for us as financial planners to know: is this truly a pension? Or you mentioned that you were an executive, so is this an executive deferred compensation plan?
Slight differences.
Slight differences. If it's and I'll tackle the second one first. If it's an executive package or a deferred compensation plan, lots of times those are a little bit more strict in how you can, quote, take them or move them out. So that it could be that you've got several different, tranches or line items of money in there that are coming to you over a certain amount of vesting schedule. It could be, a payout of 5 years, and then you might have another little sum of money that's paid out over 10 or 12 years. There's lots of different combinations that you can see that. If it's just a pension, then typically the conversation we have with folks is, okay, normally you have a couple of choices. You can take that out. You can roll it out lump sum. Typically, that would be rolled out into an IRA.
It is pre-tax.
If it's pre-tax money, and
most pensions are.
Most pensions are. I mean, I'd be shocked if there was any Roth component to it, but I guess it's possible. Or do you want to take the income stream, basically, whether that's over a set number of years, it could be payable for life, as a lot of pensions are. And we would basically run some different calculations on expected rate of return if you rolled that out lump sum and reinvested it in the market. Or does it have any sort of cost of living adjustment? If this is a private pension, it more than likely does not. So that means whatever that fixed amount per month is, it will stay that way for the rest of your life. And so what benefit outweighs the other? We'd also need to know a little bit more about your current income situation and all that other stuff. But those are just kind of off the rip, just some different possibilities that you may be dealing with as far as how to take that out and different options you may have. So again, let's clarify, is this a traditional pension or is this some sort of executive deferred compensation plan? Let's clarify that up, and then we can talk about the different options that you have within those two options.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. In the studio this morning is Garrett Ray and Brice Payne. And let's go ahead and just finish up that one. I would say to the writer of that question, probably what you want to do is sit down with a holistic financial planner who can run those numbers for you and help you figure out, of your options that you have, which one makes the most sense for you. There's a lot of calculations that go into this. And if somebody just who is not in the field and not perhaps a retirement income certified professional as we are here, they might be overlooking some calculations that you need to run, and you might be making the wrong decision. So I highly recommend that you sit down with somebody who knows how to run those calculations and give you an idea as to what your options are and what the best one is for your particular situation. It might even be that your best friend, who is also an executive who's getting the same pension, he might be in a different financial situation and makes a different decision with his financial planner, and that was right for him. That does not mean it would be the right option for you. So don't. And this is across the board piece of advice for everybody out there. Do not make a financial decision just because your neighbor did and it was the right decision for him. That's like taking a medication just because your neighbor takes it and it was the right medication for him. There's a lot of variables that go into something like that. And you need to make sure that you've got professional help helping you figure out what things to calculate out there to make those decisions. All right, let's go ahead and get to the second question here before our break. Comes in, Brice and Garrett. I own a business with 8 employees and would like to retire within the next 5 years. Should I try to sell the business at that time or just save as much as I can for the next 5 years to make sure I have enough to retire on? So let me repeat this question, Garrett. I was reading this. Should I try to sell the business in 5 years when I want to retire? Should I try to sell it at that time or just save as much as I can for the next 5 years to make sure I have enough to retire on? I was confused by the question, why are these two things conflicting with each other? Why can't we do both?
Yeah, I mean, I happen to agree with you, Brice. If we have the means to, why wouldn't we be exploring both options? If you're roughly 5 years out, start kind of getting a valuation on your business and seeing kind of, hey, what is this worth? What are some likely or some potential buyers out there? A lot of that takes time, and it can take several years of prep to even do it right. But yeah, I agree with you. Why does doing the valuation of the business stop you from starting to invest or increasing your investments if you've already got some investments? Do things simultaneously. The other thing I guess I would ask, just kind of going a level deeper, is you mentioned the other 8 employees. Is it possible that you could arrange some sort of agreement where one of I'm assuming younger employees or a group of them enter some sort of buyout agreement with you? Mm-hmm. That way the business is going into trusted hands. You still do get to sell your business, but perhaps you enter an agreement where you remain on in an advisory role for an additional 3, 4, 5 years, just to kind of ensure a smooth transition and get some sort of a compensation for yourself.
Yeah,
the business.
And you can save for retirement in the meantime as well.
Absolutely.
Good question. But I don't think those two things are independent of each other.
Yep.
Well, we're going to have to get to a break here. And of course, we've got the trivia questions. So we will be back with more listener questions after this. But Garrett, are you ready for the trivia question on this beautiful August morning?
Well, I'm going to say yes. Although you always surprise me.
Okay. On September 1st, 1985, 40 years ago, this was found in the North Atlantic Ocean. It had been there and had been tirelessly searched for over 70 years. What was it that was found on September 1st, 1985, at the bottom of the North Atlantic Ocean? Okay, stick around for the answer to that trivia question and see if we stumped Garrett or any of you out there on the other side of this short break. This is Brice Payne. With me is Garrett Ray. The show's The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And this is Newstalk 94.5 WPTI. And this is 96.7 FM WTOB. Newstalk 94.5 WPTI. 96.7 FM WTOB. Welcome back to the Wealth Guardian Show, where we help you retire the job and keep the paycheck. I'm Brice Payne in the Wealth Guardian studio this August morning, along with Garrett Ray. And in this second segment, we're going to continue dipping into our listener mailbag and seeing what questions have come out from the Triad area for people who listen to our show. Now, before we answer the trivia question that we left you hanging with at the end of the last segment, I want to ask you this, another question. Are you planning to retire? Probably the answer to that is yes. But have you met with a retirement income certified professional who is also a fiduciary? If not, right here and now, I'm inviting you to take us up on a complimentary review of your current situation. That's complimentary with a capital C. As certified retirement planning specialists, we will put together a customized written plan with strategies for portfolio allocation, income distribution, Social Security filing, tax efficiency, with the additional benefit of often reducing both the risk and the fees of your current plan. So if you've put aside at least $400,000 and you want to take us up on this no-cost, no-obligation review, give us a call, 336-391-3409. That's 336-391-3409, or go to thewealthguardians.com. That's thewealthguardians.com to learn more. Let us show you in black and white how to retire the job and keep the paycheck. All right, let's go ahead and get back to this trivia question. Garrett had some time to think over the break, but I think he actually knew the answer before we even went to break. I could tell by the confidence on his face here. Let's see if I'm right. On September 1st, 1985, 40 years ago, this was found in the North Atlantic Ocean. It had been there and had been tirelessly searched for over 70 years. Garrett, what did they find? What was found on September 1st, 1985 in the North Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah, I think I know this one. I was not even 3 months old yet, but I believe it is the wreck of the Titanic. Yeah.
There you go, the wreck of the Titanic. Most of us have seen the movie, but it had been down there. A French-American expedition group found it. It had sunk on its maiden voyage, leaving Southampton, UK to New York City. And it had been down there for over 70 years. But did you know this? The Titanic had two sister ships. One of them was called the Britannic, which was a floating hospital. They converted it to a floating hospital after World War I. And it hit a mine in the Aegean Sea from World War I and sank in 1916. So 1 year before the Titanic sank.
Okay. Wow.
Interesting
Did
little.
not know that.
Yeah, it's kind of a cursed family there, I think. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get to some more listener trivia questions here. Thank you for sticking around for the break. Let's get to this next one.
Okay.
I've been told that I should roll money from my 401k to an IRA where I'll have more investment options. but my 401k has been doing really well for the last several months. So why would I want to move it? So just to be clear to everybody out there, if you have a 401k, most people think that you keep it there until you leave that employer and then you can roll it over to an IRA. You'll have more investment options there. It's a non-taxable event to do that rollover. But a lot of people don't realize, Garrett, that the rule changed after the financial crisis that even if you still work with your employer, if you are 59 and a half or older, you can do what is called an in-service rollover of that 401k. It doesn't impact your employment. It doesn't impact your future contributions to the 401k that you've come to know and love. All you're doing is taking the current balance out of there, moving it over to an IRA. Why would anybody ever want to do that? Because 401ks are notoriously limited in what kind of investment options you have inside there.
Right.
The typical 401k probably has somewhere around 20 mutual funds as an investment option. Some companies will also give you the option to invest in company stock, but that is for 95% of the plans out there. That is it. That's all you can invest in. About 20 mutual funds and maybe some company stock. There's literally hundreds of thousands of investments out there in the open markets that you could have access to via a IRA.
Yep.
So if you do have the opportunity to move it over to a 401k, generally that is what we refer to as taking the handcuffs off it. And you would want to do that when you can. So the question is, we're being asked, my 401k has been doing really well for the last several months. So why would I want to move it? Garrett, what does that have to do with anything, whether or not?
Yeah, I mean, so if this person is age 59 and a half or older, then, I'm going to say you can do the best of both worlds. Why wouldn't you enjoy that in-service rollover option that you have, roll the money out to an IRA, and then you've got, at that point, the world of diversification ahead of you inside of the IRA. Get with a professional financial planner, do some research on the mutual funds that you are basically held captive to inside the 401k. Hey, are these even quality mutual funds? Sometimes they're good. Lots of times we find that they're actually not so good. But if you're over 59 and a half, you can still be employed at your current employer and enjoy the higher contribution levels that you get from being a participant in a 401k plan. You can still contribute at a very high level inside of that 401k, which of course lowers your taxable income, assuming this is all pre-tax. So while you're working, so that way you're doing the heavy lifting, preparing for your retirement years, but you're also starting to explore higher quality investments outside of the 401k in that IRA rollover that you just did, and potentially getting a lot better return for your cost inside of these mutual funds as well. Lots of times mutual funds tend to be notoriously costly once you break out all the fees. So I would just say that this is certainly a question to float to a financial planner and make sure that you're doing your homework on what exists inside that 401k. But I still like staying active in the 401k just for the contribution purposes alone.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yep.
So you can dollar cost average into that.
Yep.
If you're just tuning in, you're listening to the Wealth Guardian Show with Doug Ray. In the studio this morning is Brice Payne and Garrett Ray, and we're dipping into our listener mailbag questions that we try to do at the first Saturday of every month. And let's get to our next question here. Doug, Garrett, and Brice, I counted up the mutual funds in my IRA, and it appears that I have 33 different funds. Mm-hmm. Is that adequate diversification? Wow. Wow. Let's explain real quick, Garrett, what a mutual fund is to everybody out there so they can understand.
Yeah.
You out there as an investor, let's say that you've got an IRA or even a brokerage account out there. You can invest in all the individual stocks that you want to, hundreds of them, thousands of them if you wanted to, 10, 20 of them. And you could, once you have enough, what is enough is up for debate, but once you have enough, you've got a diversified portfolio. But you want to make sure that you're covering your large cap companies, your mid cap companies, maybe some small cap. You want to cover companies inside the U.S. You want to cover them outside the U.S. You want to get the different sectors going, pharmaceuticals, energy, consumer staples, that kind of thing. And you've got a diversified portfolio. Mutual funds come into play because most people out there don't know how to do the research or haven't done the research on what companies are the good companies to invest in.
Correct.
So they buy a mutual fund, which is kind of like a shoebox of hundreds of company stocks in there. and therefore it's already diversified.
Correct.
Now, you can buy one mutual fund out there, if it's the right kind of mutual fund, that's called a balanced fund.
Right.
And it would have all of those companies and even some bonds in there as well. And you would be properly diversified by way of one mutual fund.
Yeah.
If you didn't want to do it that way and you wanted to pick and choose individual specific mutual funds, you could have maybe 10 or so, and you'd have a U.S. large cap, a ex-U.S. large cap. You could have, a tech mutual fund, however you want to do it. And that would probably only need about 6 or 7 mutual funds.
Right.
If they were specific ones to have a diversified portfolio. There is no way that I see that somebody needs 33 mutual funds in their portfolio. The amount of duplicates that they have from one mutual fund to the other is probably overwhelming.
Yeah. The overlap is insane. And I mean, it's like, so you explained that beautifully, Brice. I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of that, let's focus on one specific area of the economy, like technology stocks, right?
Okay.
So, Apple, Google, Meta, Tesla, NVIDIA, they're all technology stocks. I'll ask the listeners out there, which one of those 5 that I just rattled off do you think is going to perform the best? Do you really want to do that research to pick that company stock? You could do that inside of a stock portfolio. You could buy certain individual technology stocks and then diversify it with other sectors of the economy. Or, to keep it simple, you just buy a technology mutual fund. You've got a little slice of all of those very healthy, large companies. And then you might pair it up with like an oil and gas mutual fund. And then you might pair it up with a consumer defensive mutual fund. You've basically just kind of helped yourself create a diversified stock portfolio without owning the stocks outright. That's the entire purpose of mutual funds. That's really what they're meant to do. Yes, they do have higher fees because you're basically paying some team of managers and analysts to select those stocks for you and pool them in a mutual fund.
Right.
But it's basically the way that we get diversification without having to do too much work and too much research.
Garrett, explain to the listeners out there why we as professional advisors are not the biggest fans of mutual funds.
Well,
having said all of that about mutual funds, answering the question, explain why we don't.
Several different reasons. One, they're not very tax efficient whatsoever. At the end of the year, basically, there's a cost basis adjustment that all these mutual funds do when they're kind of switching out the ownership they have in these stocks. So in December, you're often hit with a surprise capital gains tax at the end of every year. Which most people either don't pay attention to or didn't realize. The other thing, too, is that, are we to assume that these managers and these analysts who work for these mutual funds are doing their work for free? Of course not. So you're paying a management fee on top of perhaps an advisory fee if that mutual fund is inside of a managed money with a financial planner. Or if it's even inside an employer plan, that employer plan has fees associated with it as well. So you're basically paying double fees. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you want the kind of quick out to diversification. That's the whole purpose of mutual funds. But they're not the most tax efficient investments, and they're certainly not the cheapest investments.
Right.
So, with a layer or two more of analysis and kind of sophistication, we can get a cheaper and potentially more tax efficient investment plan for you without having to pay the fees of the mutual funds.
So here's the analogy I use. Mutual funds were designed for convenience.
Correct.
Amateur advisor, somebody who didn't know how to do all the research on the individual companies. You can buy one mutual fund and have a diversified portfolio. That's convenience. You're going to pay for that convenience. But if you have a professional advisor, as we are at the Wealth Guardians, 336-391-3409 is our phone number, thewealthguardians.com. If you have a professional advisor, and they're using mutual funds, my analogy for that is you've gone to a restaurant and you pick the beef stroganoff to order, and the chef is opening up a box of Hamburger Helper in the back to create that meal. The box of Hamburger Helper was created for you as somebody who is not a chef to be able to make a halfway decent meal in a matter of minutes. If it's a professional creating the meal, you would think that they're not using a tool of convenience. So they're using their expertise to create that meal.
Right.
If you've got a professional advisor, they should be able to create a diversified portfolio for you without using the convenience of mutual funds and also the fees of mutual funds. That's what we at the Wealth Guardians do. We do not use mutual funds. If you're your own individual advisor and you're picking them out yourself, that's the cost of the mutual fund is probably worth it to you if you don't know how to pick out your companies yourself. But if you've got a professional advisor, just like we are here, we don't use mutual funds, and we're I would say that I would be always cautious about some professional advisor out there who is using mutual funds.
Or at least exclusively.
Exclusive. Okay, that's a good point. Right. Unfortunately, that's going to wrap it up for this week. I do want to thank you for joining us on this August weekend. Football around the corner, folks. We hope the rest of your weekend is everything you want it to be. This is Brice Payne, along with Garrett Ray. The show is The Wealth Guardians, helping you retire the job and keep the paycheck. And let me remind you, sound financial plans do not create themselves. This is News Talk 94.5 WPTI. This is 96.7 FM WTOB.
Hi, it's Garrett Ray with The Wealth Guardians. Thanks so much for listening to the show. Make sure to check out our weekly series, The Vault, on YouTube. Find our channel, The Wealth Guardians, where we talk about all things retirement planning and cover new topics each week, such as Social Security, tax planning in retirement, and our thoughts on investment best practices, and much more. New episodes air Thursdays at 2 p.m. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can get notifications when we release new episodes. We're here to help you retire the job and keep that paycheck. We'll talk soon.